Welcome to the Mama Village podcast, your go-to resource for all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. From positive and informative stories to expert advice, this platform is designed to help you feel informed and remove fear as you journey through motherhood. Join this community as we share stories that warm the heart and expert insights that inform the mind. I'm your host, Ellen. Before we delve into today's episode, the Mama Village would like to take a moment to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather, work and share these stories across many lands in Australia. The Mama Village recognises the traditional custodians of the land and recognises their enduring connection to this country and extends our respects to elders past, present and emerging. It is important to recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women cultivated a profound connection between birthing and the land. For generations, these communities have woven birth stories into the fabric of their cultural identity, creating a tapestry of knowledge that transcends time. As we explore birth stories and education, we acknowledge the importance of preserving and revitalising traditional birthing culture, recognising the profound impact it has had on the understanding of birth as a sacred and deeply spiritual experience. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Mama Village podcast. Joining us today is Tam, who will be sharing her positive twin birth story. Tam welcomed her identical twins into the world at 36 weeks and 6 days, going into spontaneous labour. With twin A head down and twin B breech, Tam faced some unique challenges and limited birthing options. But through it all, she trusted in her innate ability as a woman to birth her babies. In this episode, we'll dive into the details of Tam's journey, from her initial reactions to finding out that she was having twins, to the support that she received during labour, and how she navigated the healthcare system's constraints. Her story is a testament to the strength and resilience of women and a reminder of the powerful natural capabilities we possess when it comes to childbirth. So whether you're expecting twins yourself or simply looking for some uplifting birth stories, this episode is sure to inspire and empower you. Don't forget that if you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform. If you would like to share your positive pregnancy, birth and postpartum story, or if you have education in the space to share, please send me a direct message on Instagram or email the.mamavillage@outlook.com. Now let's get into today's episode. So welcome to the Mama Village, Tamara.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. So do you want to start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself? So your age, where you're from and who's in your family?
Yep, so my name is Tamara. I'm 31 and I live in Melbourne with my husband Andrew. And then I have 3 little ones, and sometimes saying, having 3 kids, it's actually so much because not only long ago I only had 1. But yeah, so I've got a 3-year-old boy, Matisse, and then I have 2 little girls, which are Olive and Maeve, and they're 3.5 months now.
Oh, that's so nice. And Matisse is quite a unique name. How did you
Yes.
find that name?
Oh, well, I would love to say that we saw the Henry Matisse's paintings and we really did love them. And I would love to say that it came from that, but it really didn't. It's actually from football. We were watching the Brownlow one. My husband loves footy, and yeah, we saw it come up, and I'm like, that is a beautiful name, and we have to go with it. So that's a true story.
I love that. I think that's really great. So today we're going to talk about your pregnancy and birth with him, and then we're also going to talk about your pregnancy and birth of your beautiful little twins. So I'm super excited to get into that. And to start, let's talk about your first pregnancy. So did you do anything to prepare to conceive?
Not really. My husband and I had recently gotten married. So we got married in October 2019, and it was just before the COVID pandemic kind of started. And it was just, let's have a baby. And as my husband would say, one hit wonder, and we were able to conceive quite quickly and we were all healthy, and that went along really nicely.
Oh, that's so nice. So how are you feeling then physically and emotionally throughout that pregnancy?
I do have a background in weight training and, I was pretty heavily involved in exercise. My husband's a physio, so I stayed really healthy throughout that time, doing some Pilates and weight training and just walking the dog and that sort of thing. So that was really good. And then emotionally, I did have some anxiety, and I've always just had anxiety, and especially with COVID, and I was working in the hospital at that time. So it was a lot of new and unknown things coming about. So I did struggle a little bit with that and just trying to keep my emotions in check. But I did, yeah, get along just fine.
Yeah. In terms of nausea and things like that, was that all manageable and
Yeah, I was pretty okay as long as I was eating every so often. I think I had to eat like every 2 hours or something like that. But it was, yeah, no, it was fine. Especially the first time around, I'm like, oh, I don't really know what to expect. And I had heard so much about morning sickness. So I'm glad that it wasn't too bad,
yeah.
especially compared to the second time with the twins. That was full on.
I can only imagine. So, what did you do to prepare both physically and mentally for birth?
Yeah, so again, like I said, having that background of exercise training, I did as much as I could, exercising emotionally or mentally. I guess it was the hypnobirthing. I did the online hypnobirth with my husband, and he was really open to that. So that was really good. And I had a wonderful midwife. So I had what we call a caseload midwife, or MGP program, where you have the same midwife the whole way through. And she was really helpful in that sense. And she was providing me more information around hypnobirthing. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, nice. And did you read any books or anything like that to prepare?
I did. Oh, now my sister-in-law got me a book. It was a long time ago, and I will admit I didn't read it the second time around, but I think it was called Beyond the Bump.
Oh,
I
okay.
think, yeah, can't remember off the top of my head, but I think that was it. And that was a really good book, as well as Buddhism for Mothers, just preparing myself for what things might look like in the next year.
Yeah, nice. And so you mentioned that your model of care was MGP. So that's through
Yep.
the hospital. And like you said, you just have the same midwife.
Mhm.
So, what was your perception of birth before you even fell pregnant?
To be honest, I didn't really think much about it until I was actually pregnant. And that's when I started doing all that work, hypnobirthing, and really, I guess, trying to tune into myself, how my body was feeling, and how I was going along with the pregnancy. And it was kind of just like, okay, so you go into the hospital and you have a baby, and then you take care of the baby.
Yeah, okay. And through MGP, correct me if I'm wrong, but pain relief such as epidurals and things like that aren't as readily available. Is that right?
I mean, like with everything, I think obviously it's your choice to do what you want. And I found with my midwife, she was quite supportive to whatever I had in mind, but definitely it wasn't something that I wanted. So we didn't really go down that route. We did kind of mention it, but especially with that hypnobirthing and really tuning into your body and breathing through surges and knowing what things are feeling like, that was really helpful.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's jump into your birth story for your son. So,
Yeah.
how are you feeling towards the end of your pregnancy? And then, how many weeks were you when labor started?
Well, I was actually induced with my son at 39 weeks. I was feeling a bit stressed out towards the end. I think there was just a lot of things going on at the moment at that time. So I had gone into hospital, we did some monitoring, and they found out that I had oligo, which
Oh,
is yeah, so
what's
it's
that?
the low fluid, low
Okay.
amniotic fluid, and that was 37 weeks. So when that happened, I think it was almost like a coincidental finding. It wasn't exactly related to some of the headaches that I was having, and they didn't find anything else. And so then I went back to all this research and, just digging up, what does it mean and what can I do? What are my options? And we ended up advocating for about 2 weeks to just go in to do regular monitoring. And, baby was healthy. I was feeling good apart from the headaches that I was having due to my stressful situation at the time. And we agreed to an induction at 39 weeks. So, yeah, those 2 weeks, everything was okay. But then it kind of crept into me and I said, everything is okay, but what if something changes and what if something does go wrong? So I was feeling a bit guilty at the time, and some pressure from the medical team and doctors, which work off high risk. I mean, that's what their job is, to
Yeah, that's
medicalize
right.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did end up agreeing to an induction, and yeah, I was induced.
Yeah, and were you nervous about an induction before you were induced?
Well, because I had those 2 weeks where I was advocating for myself to kind of just let things come along naturally, I had mentally prepared for, okay, this is the process of an induction, this is what it's going to look like or what it could look like. And I mean, either way, whether I went into spontaneous labor or whether I was induced, I wasn't going to have any control about birthing. So I just said, yep, let's do it and let's get this baby here. And it was actually nice knowing, my baby's going to be here tomorrow or whatever. So that
Yeah,
was good. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about his birth. So, what induction drugs did they initially start you off with, and how was labor progressing?
So I was induced so it started the day before I actually gave birth. So it was a balloon catheter that they popped in to ripen your cervix, and I had to sleep with that, which was a really uncomfortable feeling. And I really didn't get much sleep that night. But yeah, then the next day, that was taken out and they did a VE to see how it was going. And I was 3 centimeters. And then after that, I kind of wanted a bit of time to just see how things would naturally progress. So I managed to get home for a little nap. I'm like, I'm just going to go for a little walk and just a little bit of time to see how things go, and got to have a little nap at home, came back, and then they said, okay, well, nothing's kind of happening. So let's go ahead and break the waters. And I think that was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And again, we were trying to let things happen naturally, but there wasn't really much movement. So they started the Syntocin at about 1 p.m. And then my son was born at like 5:45.
Wow. And so, what was your experience of labor like on the Syntocin? Did you find it bearable or intense? What was your experience like?
I felt like it was quite intense. It went from 0 to 100 quite quickly. I don't know the specifics of how much they were providing through the drip. So, yeah, I don't know how it usually works, but I felt like it happened quite quickly, and I felt like my body was trying to catch up almost, but it was all happening quite quickly.
Yeah. And I think that's a common experience for inductions. And it's kind of good to hear that you still found it somewhat, this is the impression that I'm getting anyway, that you still
Mm.
found it somewhat manageable and you didn't ask for pain relief at all throughout the labor.
Do you know what? Honestly, I swear it happened so fast. I really wasn't thinking it was happening that fast.
Yeah, okay.
And I think because it was happening so fast, I didn't have the chance to actually ask for any pain relief. I had all these things that I was going to use the hot water, and because I had an induction, I wasn't able to go into a birthing pool. But yeah, it all just happened so fast that I couldn't pick anything to do, which I'm not complaining about, because even though it wasn't really on my mind to have an epidural, it just wasn't something that I needed.
Yeah, sure. And how are you feeling in that moment after he was born?
Overwhelmed. It was really like, okay, wow, he's here, and wow, I just birthed him. So it really was amazing. It was wonderful, and my husband was able to catch him, which was really nice for him, and we all just kind of sat on the. So I gave birth like kind of squatting over some mats, and we were all just there like, oh my gosh, he's here, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah,
so
it was a
nice.
great, yeah, I was so glad that I was able to have a positive induction. And that was one thing that I really focused on, knowing that I had to have an induction. Then I looked at positive induction stories and being able to know that things can go well, even though it's a bit scary. It was, yeah, it was a good way to have my first birth, because I think it sets up so much for your following births as well.
And that's too why I like it when people share positive induction stories, because whilst we know that physiological birth can lead to better outcomes for baby and mother, inductions are necessary when they're necessary. Like, we still need them. And so
Mhm.
I really don't want to create fear for women who are potentially needing to be induced or making that choice.
Absolutely. And like I said, we got to pick my son's birthday, and, it's just like those little things that, yeah, you do get when you think about it, you try and think about the positive side of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Can you talk us through the birth of your placenta with your son? How was that?
Yeah. So that was, I think it's called active management when they give you yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had that injection for the placenta to be born.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
think there's much more to that story. It was
Yeah.
kind of boring.
Did you do anything special with your placenta at that time?
I didn't, and I'm actually really sad about that because I think I was so caught up in the whole induction side of things that I didn't even, I had thought about encapsulating or even doing like a print. I've seen some really beautiful prints, but yeah, no, I didn't get any of that. We did, do like a little tour of the placenta with my midwife,
Yeah.
which was really great. And we took photos of it and got to see all the beautiful, beautiful things that kept my baby alive in there. But no, that was very sad.
Yeah, okay. Did you do anything to prepare for postpartum? And if so, what were some of the things you did to prepare?
I did, and probably not as much as I could have done, but my midwife, she found this really handy postpartum plan to just get me thinking about what it might look like postpartum. And so I was able to organise some family to help out with meals, and I made sure that my mum and my sister were readily available to come over. So it was really good to just get that thinking started because I didn't again prepare much for that. It was the focus was more on the birth. That
Mm,
was my priority at the time.
yeah, sure. So then how was your overall postpartum experience?
It was a bit of a blur. Again, that anxiety kind of came up for me. I had anxiety throughout the pregnancy and then postpartum. And so I feel like the fourth trimester was a bit of a blur where everything kind of just meshed in together. The days became nights and weeks. But I was thankful to have my family there to be that support that I needed.
Yeah, okay. And did you have postpartum anxiety in that more severe sense where you needed mental health assistance, or was it just a little bit of anxiety that came up for you after birth?
I think it was, well, I mean, nothing was officially diagnosed, but definitely it was that anxiety that was, happening every day, and just debriefing with family was good.
Yeah, okay. Well, it sounds like you had some support there, which is really nice to hear because
Mm,
postpartum and depression and anxiety is quite common. And unfortunately, I think we don't recognize it as soon as what we could. And so we don't get help as early as we need and, those
mm.
sorts of things. But it sounds like in your case, you did have that support and you were able to get through it.
Yeah, yeah. I was really thankful just to have that family support, and even my background is social work, so being aware the signs, and I actually ended up becoming a counselor and working for Panda after my first pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I kind of felt I wasn't really suitable for the role because I've experienced this and so on and so on, but no, it was a really great experience being able to support other mothers and parents and family members who are experiencing different mental health symptoms post birth or during pregnancy.
Yeah, I feel like it would be the opposite, that you would be better for that sort of role because you've got this deeper level of understanding, right? And you can
Yeah,
connect on that other level.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so nice. So let's jump into your second pregnancy. So after your first baby, what was that conversation like in terms of, yep, I'm ready to have another baby?
So I feel like I was ready straight away. I'm like, yeah, let's have another one. But thankfully it didn't work out that way because we had twins. And so we were trying for it felt like quite a time because the first time around it happened so quickly. We were trying for about 8-ish months, but I really was trying as much as I could to be as healthy as possible, staying physically active and eating well to get myself ready for having another baby.
So did you do anything differently to prepare to conceive this time around?
I think, like I said, I was a little bit more healthier and cautious with what I was eating. And because it had taken what felt like so long, and obviously I'm aware that other people take even longer to fall pregnant, I started charting, I think it's called basal.
Basal body
I don't know.
temperature or something like that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was taking my temperature in the morning just to see when I was fertile. So that was the only thing that I think that I can remember that I did differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, like you said, look, 8 months is still a long time and you're definitely valid in your experience.
Mm,
Doesn't take away from, I think, other people's experiences with infertility where it can take years. I think it's still important to acknowledge our own experience and struggles and challenges
mm,
sometimes with trying to conceive, even if it might not be as long as someone else's journey,
yeah.
because both are difficult. And yeah, obviously for people struggling with infertility, I can't even imagine the emotional heartache that would
Yeah.
cause. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're all doing our best and trying the ways that we know best to be able to fall pregnant. So yeah,
Yeah.
everyone has their own experiences, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to ask you this question. Can you walk us through how you found out you were having twins and then what were your initial emotions?
Yeah, so we found out that I was pregnant at about 4 weeks, and so we went to do our first scan at 8 weeks. And I say we because I did bring along my husband and son.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of sitting there. The sonographer puts the stick, what's it called, a probe or something like
I
that.
actually don't know. I'm pretty good with this stuff, but I still
Yeah.
don't know what that's called. But yes.
Yeah, I feel, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that
Yeah.
little thing.
Yeah.
And so I see on the screen two little jelly beans, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that doesn't look the same as the first time. And she kind of turns around and she says, you know, you're having two, right? You know, there's two in there. And I'm like, looking at my husband, I'm like, are you recording this? Like, is this happening? And Andrew's just like, oh, he was just really baffled and he had no idea what to say. He's like, are you sure? Like, what is going on? He was not coping whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, twins. Great. That's great. I think I kind of went
Yeah.
into it was a shock, absolutely, and I was so surprised, but it was a relief that we do have two little babies in there. But I accepted it quite quickly. And I think part of the reason is because there were so many times my husband and I had joked about having twins, just saying like 2 in 1. Why
Yeah.
not? Let's just do it because it'll be easier. And yeah.
So do twins run in your family?
No, not as far as we are aware, not in my family, not in my husband's family. So it wasn't anything that we had expected
Yeah.
apart from our jokes of saying we'll just have twins.
Wow. So in Australia, twins often are labelled high risk, or your pregnancy
Mm.
is labelled high risk. So, how did you navigate that label and how did it affect your pregnancy experience?
Well, with that high risk label, I should have mentioned the twins that I have.
Oh,
They're
yeah, please.
identical. Yeah. So they're identical, which is MCDA twins. So it's the medium kind of risk. So I think the other one is DCDA, which are two separate eggs and they have their own placenta. Whereas my twins, they were sharing a placenta, which means there's more risk of what's called twin to twin transfusion syndrome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a kind of a medium risk. And my husband actually went home and he was like searching, like, what are all the different types of twins and what does it mean? And how did we fall pregnant with twins?
How did this happen?
Yeah. And even from that first ultrasound, the lady wasn't actually 100% sure. She said, it looks like you're having MCDA twins, but not exactly sure. And so, because I work in a hospital, I was aware of how the hospital system works, and how, doctors, again, they're working from a risk point of view, and their recommendations usually are from that worst case scenario of what the worst thing could happen would be. So I went into research mode. I went into searching all sorts of things about twins, and I really don't like being told what to do. So someone saying, high risk, it means this, it means that, and I really didn't want my vision of giving birth to twins, because again, that vision of giving birth was different from my first. After I had gone through that experience, I'm like, okay, I don't want another induction. Honestly, I would have loved a home birth, and because of twins in Australia, you can't give birth at home. You do have to go through the hospital. So
you can't. No private midwife will support
no
a home birth in Australia.
Yeah. And so I wasn't ready or really thinking about doing a free birth or anything like that. I did want that support there. And I actually managed to get my first midwife to be a part of my pregnancy again, which was really awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But that was also linked in with the MFM team, the model of care, which was, what's it called?
The
Fetal
midwife
monitoring. No, so with the OB,
Oh.
because it was high risk, so they...
Is it special fetal medicine unit or something like that?
Yeah, maternal fetal medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, so thankfully I had my midwife, but I also did have that OB care through them.
Yeah, okay. And so how often did you have to see the OB throughout your pregnancy?
So it was recommended to go in every fortnight for ultrasounds and chat with the OB, which I did do. But honestly, a lot of the time it was just like, yep, everything's great. You can go home, see you in 2 weeks. And I'm like, I knew everything was okay. Do I need to keep coming?
Yeah.
But again, I did. And I think it is sometimes through that medical model, that fear instilling kind of information and the way that it's portrayed. So I didn't want to risk anything. And, it wasn't hard for me to go into the hospital. So I was okay with that.
Yeah, okay. And so how were you feeling physically and emotionally throughout your pregnancy?
I was really good, really excited this time. I had done it once. I'm like, oh, I can do it. And I guess the research and the information that I was filling myself with was around being confident and believing in the woman's body and ability to birth. So that was something that I was really different to the first time. But I did somehow fall ill with, I still don't even know to this day what it was. I had some sort of virus which let me be sick for about 3-ish weeks, and I wasn't eating, I was vomiting, I lost, I think it was like 8 kilos, and it was actually really, it was actually really bad because they didn't even figure out what it was. And because the babies were healthy and I had no concern about the girls, like I knew they were okay, they kind of said there isn't anything for us to do. If you need to, you can go to emergency, but the maternity centre didn't do anything to kind of check in what was going on there.
Oh, yeah, that's unusual. And I suppose on that as well, did you know that they were girls before they were born?
As soon as, like I said, found out we were pregnant at 4 weeks, and I was really sick. I had really bad morning sickness this time, and I'm like, oh, it's definitely a girl. I thought just one little girl was making her way, but then we found out that there was 2, and I think we did a scan to see when, I think it was, how many weeks is it that you do
The morphology scan at
yeah
20 weeks usually.
yeah, so it would have been around about then where we found out that we were having 2 girls.
Wow. And was it at that scan too that it was confirmed the type of twins that they were in terms of being identical and sharing a placenta?
We went back for another scan. So we did that 8-week scan and then we went back again at 10 weeks. And that's when it was confirmed that it was identical, the MCDA twins.
Yeah, okay. And so then after finding out that you were having twins and doing that research, what was your perception of birth in terms of how did you want to birth the twins? What was your vision?
Yeah, I really wanted to go into spontaneous labor this time. Being induced that first time, I really wanted to let my body do what it had to do, let the girls come whenever they wanted to come, whenever they were ready. And again, through the hospital, it's discussed quite early on in the appointments that the options for birth were to be induced at 36 weeks or to have an elective cesarean, neither of which were my preferences. So I don't even know where I was going with that.
Yeah, I was just asking what was your vision for your birth?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, naturally going into spontaneous labor and being able to birth my girls on my own without any intervention.
Yeah, beautiful. So you shared a little bit about your birthing options for twins. So they're pretty limited.
Mm,
And I think, like you said, when you go to hospital, you're given the option of an induction pretty early
mhm,
on and
mm,
or an elective cesarean. So I
yeah.
imagine your desire to go into spontaneous labor, did you have to fight for that at all, or was that something accepted?
So I guess the take that I had with the hospital was kind of being open to listening to the recommendations and, asking my questions, but also going back and doing my own research. So I was, I went into labour at 36 and 6, so it wasn't far off what their recommendation was. So there
Oh.
wasn't too much fighting, I guess, in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned you did a few things differently to prepare for birth this time around. What
Mm.
resources did you use this time?
So my favourite resource was the Dr. Stu Birthing Instincts podcast.
Yeah.
He specialises in twins and breech, which were I had both in my case. So that was a really, really good resource. That was probably my favourite resource, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And did you do hypnobirthing again this time?
I had an audiobook that I kind of just listened through, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting to go into labour so soon. So I didn't even get to finish that book. There were so many things that I didn't get to do because I'm like, oh, even though everyone says it'll happen earlier, it's not going to happen to me. I'll be still pregnant at 40 weeks. But yeah, that definitely wasn't my case.
Yeah, okay. So, do you want to walk us through your birth story? How are you feeling towards the end of your pregnancy and how many weeks were you when labour started?
So I was 36 and 6 when labour started, and throughout my whole pregnancy, I felt like I carried quite well. I was still mobile, I was able to walk, and I was exercising quite regularly, which I think was a real important for my pregnancy. I think everyone's pregnancy to stay physically healthy. So yeah, I put my son to sleep at about 9:40, and then I got out of the room and my contractions started straight away.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what time of night was this?
9:40
Yeah,
p.m.
okay.
Yeah. So I think my body was kind of just waiting for my son to go asleep and for it to be nice and quiet and calm. But it's actually funny because at about midday, we had gone to the pool and I was, swimming around, and then I had like a tightening. I had no idea that it was a contraction. I think it was a contraction. I don't know. Anyways, and it just went away, and that was it. Like nothing else happened throughout the day until 9:40. And
Wow.
so I called my midwife not long after that. I'm like, I'm really having some strong cramps, and it's in my lower tummy. Is it labor? Like, what's happening? Is this real? And yeah, she kind of said, sounds like it might be. Just monitor, see how you go. And then I went to the bathroom and I noticed that my water had broken. And I'm like, oh, okay, it is. It's happening. I
Wow. And so, how far apart were your contractions at this point?
think they might have been maybe 5 minutes. around about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's pretty full
Uh,
on quite quickly.
yeah, and again, I guess because I had that experience with my son and it did happen quietly and intensely, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this might be it. So my husband calls my mum and my in-laws and says, it's happening. Someone come over and take care of Matisse. Yeah, and then like my mum arrived, and so my mum was coming with us to the hospital.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I felt like I needed that extra support, especially because there were two little girls coming. So then she got there and we got in the car, and I think it was about a 15-minute drive, which wasn't too far. It was all right.
And what time of night
And
was this in terms of when you headed to the hospital?
so it would have been about an hour later, so 10:40.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time that my husband was still packing the bag because the bag wasn't fully ready, and it wasn't until we got to the hospital and I had already given birth that we noticed that we forgot to pack nappies, and like it was just all over the place.
Oh, so your mum got there and then you all headed to the hospital. Yeah, talk us through that.
Yeah, so we got there. The receptionist lady said, "Sure, no worries, take a seat and wait your turn." And I just remember like kind of
What?
turning around. Yeah, I turned around. I'm like, "No, I will not take a seat." And I just like keep breathing through my contractions as I'm walking up and down. And this poor lady, like she's lovely, but I'm like, that's not really something that you say to a woman that's laboring.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Yeah, anyway, so I waited my turn. I think it was like maybe 10 minutes. Felt like a long time though. And the triage nurse had done a VE and I was 9 centimeters. So I just made it in time, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah, I had no idea. And, reflecting back now, I could only imagine how I would have felt if she said, "Oh, you're like 3 centimeters," or something like that, because the VE wasn't something that I actually wanted when I had my birth plan. And then sometimes, as you know, your birth plan just goes out the window when it happens. And yeah, so I was 9 centimeters when I got there.
Wow. So, how are you feeling about the contractions at that point? Were they feeling intense?
It's so hard to say because it feels intense in the moment, and then you look back and it's like, oh, but was it really that intense? But yeah, they were again full on intense, coming quite quickly, and I was, in that zone and focused, really focused, and I was doing those low tones, and I was, grunting, and my husband had called my caseload midwife to let her know that we're at the hospital. And then she's like, "Oh, is that Tam in the background?" And Andrew's like, "Yeah, that's her." And she's like, "Oh, okay, I'll be there as soon as I can. It sounds like she's close."
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, did they let you into a room after the VE?
Yeah, they did. So we went straight into the room, and it was actually quite lovely that I had the same room that I gave birth to with my son. So
Oh,
I got
that's
in there and I'm
special.
like, oh, this is so nice. I gave birth to Matisse here. So that was good. But I did feel like contractions had slowed down when I got to the hospital. It still all happened quite quickly, but I did feel like it happened, yeah, fast.
Yeah, okay. So you got led into the room and was twin A head presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then how did the labor progress?
Yeah, so I kind of just got in there. I met the doctor and I met the midwife on shift, so just like the hospital midwife, and my caseload midwife was on her way. And so the way that the MGP works is there's like a backup midwife and your midwife, and my midwife, it was her week off, so I was meeting my caseload midwife's partner for the first time when I got there. Anyway, so she came along and she was lovely and quiet and just said hello, introduced herself, and let me do what I had to do. So that was great. The room was nice and dark. The doctor was there as well, talking me through a couple of things and their recommendations. And because my midwife had called to let the doctor on shift know what my preferences were, I felt like she was a little bit, oh, okay, there's so many things that you would like as your birth preference, but they're not my recommendations. So she went along and she gave me all of her recommendations, which again, I guess that put me into that logical thinking brain, which I felt did slow down my progress, but I was able to still stay focused. And it was just a lot of horses' breaths, which I learned through B on Core and Floor Restore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was just magical. They really helped me get through every single contraction all the way until I birthed little Olive. So she was the first twin. She was twin A and she was head down. And the moment just before she was born, I said out loud, she's coming, and I could feel her like moving down. And then my waters popped completely as she was coming out and her head was born. And then seconds later, her body just kind of came out. I didn't even have to do any work for her.
Wow. So did you feel the fetal ejection reflex happening?
Yeah, I think because I was so focused, tuned into my body, feeling those surges and or contractions and breathing through it, that those horses' breaths really just were everything.
Yeah. And then who received baby when she was born?
I did.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so I was standing like next to the bed, between the bed and the wall, and she was born, and I kind of just popped my hands between my legs and grabbed her. And I
Oh,
kind of tried to pull her up, but her cord was short. So I was just holding her kind of at my hip height and saying, "Hi, baby." And yeah, it was so lovely. And my husband was there as well, obviously helping out.
yeah. And how long after she was born did the contractions start again for twin B?
So I didn't feel like they had stopped. I felt them continue on. But as soon as she was born, the doctors kind of came back. I think they might have been in the corner or something, I don't know. And they kind of came back and said, "Congratulations, your baby's born. Let's get you on the bed to do an ultrasound." And I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. Like, I don't really want to get on the bed. Can you do it standing up? And so again, I went back into that logical mindset. And I was thinking, I don't want to get on the bed, can you do this while I'm standing up? Is there a possibility of that? And they were just like, no, that's not really an option. It's better if you lay down. We have best access when you're laying on the bed.
It's easier for them to manage, which is absolutely not easier for the labouring woman.
No, no. Yeah, and I guess it was that focus that I had of wanting to birth my girls on my own. And I think that's why I went into that logical mindset. But I was, trying to breathe through the contractions, and I'm on my back, really uncomfortable. So they're like, your baby is still breech, your baby's quite high up, we should get you to start pushing. And I'm like, okay, let me stand up and I will push my baby out. She's like,
Yeah.
no, it's actually better that you just stay here. There's better access up here. I'm like, well, I can't push here. And she said, okay, well, you'll need to start pushing as soon as possible, because if you aren't able to birth your baby sooner rather than later, I'll have to recommend a cesarean. And I'm like, what? Like, I just gave birth to
Just go
my first,
away.
yeah.
Like, go away.
And so I'm there, I'm holding my first baby still, my husband, we're all kind of doing skin to skin at my hip. And I'm like, just let me stand up. So she's still attached. And that was one of the things that I really wanted. I wanted to do the delayed cord clamping. So I did manage to get that. And so, yeah, I stand up after a little bit of fighting, and then the doctors actually get called away to an emergency. I hear the buzzing going off in the back. So the doctors are gone, and I was standing with my back to where the doctors were. So I think innately I was just trying to protect myself and give myself that safe space. So My husband is there, my mum is there, and I think I'm pushing for maybe 20 minutes. And the hospital guidelines actually say to birth the second baby within 30 minutes. So it's, cutting close to that time. And then my midwife is kind of looking at me. She can see that I am, getting tired. So she says, would you like to cut the cord? Which it was a good idea to get that done. I was able to focus a little bit more. So my husband held Olive for a little bit, and then we passed her on to my mum so that I could have that support from Andrew. And so again, I am there working, and I do feel baby moving down, and it was really reassuring to have my midwife saying, you're doing well and there's progress, and she's coming down slowly and she's still breech. But I didn't have the doctors, coming in and checking again or anything like that. So that was really good. I was really thankful for that.
Yeah. Did you have any fears about having a breech baby?
Look, throughout my pregnancy, I did think about it, and then when the time had come and I had gone into labor, I'm like, oh no, I didn't prepare enough for a breech birth. But I didn't. I did watch a lot of birth videos. That was something that I really enjoyed doing throughout my pregnancy. And it was it just happens. And again, listening to Dr. Stu's podcasts, they were so invaluable, having all that reassurance from, even though he's from America, that it is something that they're able to do. And I did even chat to my midwife about this. I said, is it something that you feel comfortable with? Is there any concerns that you have about supporting me through having a breech birth? I'm not asking for anyone to do it for me, but yeah. And she was comfortable with that. And then I guess the conversations that I had with the obstetrician, there was a real big push for epidural. And so the reasoning for that was, if twin B was breech, that they would do a breech extraction. And that wasn't really something that I was interested in at all. I said, what's the reason for the breech extraction? Is there a medical reason for you to do a breech extraction? She said, well, not really. It's just so we can get the baby out. I said, okay, that's something that I can do on my own.
Yeah.
I don't need that assistance. Thank you very much.
Good on you.
And so I did. And then I said to them, what is your capacity around breech birth? And they said, oh, well, it doesn't happen often, really. It's just we do a breech extraction. I said, okay, that's
Can you
not for
explain?
me.
Yeah. Can you explain what a breech extraction is?
Yeah, so a breech extraction is when they ideally have the second baby in breech. So they do actually prefer the second baby in breech so that they can pop their hand up and, as the doctor said, yank the baby out. And when she used that term, I was like, oh, that's really insensitive and just really inappropriate. That's just terrible. I would hate for myself to have to go through that, as I guess their ideal way of birthing a baby.
It's horrible.
Yeah. And again, going back to Dr. Stu, because he was great, it is something that he had mentioned, and if anyone wants any more information, he's great with all that stuff. But yeah, he said you can birth a breech baby. There's no need to do a breech extraction unless there is a medical emergency.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit to the birth, you mentioned you were standing up again. The doctors had left the room and you could feel your baby coming down. And then how did the labour progress after that?
Again, it was that horse's breath that got me through everything. In that position, I was kind of hanging off my husband, and with all my might, just getting through each surge and breathing through, and her little bum comes out first. And it was a little bit until the rest of her body came out. I felt like I did have to work for that birth compared to Olive that came first. Yeah, and so her bum comes out first, then her body, and lastly her head, and I'm there again, ready to catch her. My hands are in between my legs, and I grab her and scoop her up. And her cord was a lot longer compared to Olive, but she does take a little while to transition from womb to earth. And so the doctors are there, and their suggestion is to have some assistance for her to get her breathing going. So we're there kind of rubbing her, nothing's really happening. So we cut the cord and they put some air on to help her start her breathing. So it wasn't too much longer. I think it was maybe a minute or two. And in hindsight, it doesn't sound like long, but in the moment, it absolutely does feel very long. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Was a bit of fear coming up for you in that moment, or were you feeling pretty calm?
Not at all. My mum was actually recording the whole thing, and I can hear myself saying, like, she's okay. She's, just taking her time. She's coming. She's coming.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once, I guess she'd landed on
Mm.
Earth, how were you feeling in that moment?
Relief. It was just relief and wanting to hold both my babies at the same time, wanting to have our first breastfeed because I felt it was so long between Olive's birth and Maeve's birth. So Olive was born on the 2nd of January at 11:58. So then Maeve wasn't born until the 3rd of January at 12:44 a.m. So they got their own birthdays. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it felt like really long between, and I was so concerned that I didn't get to spend that much time with Olive as soon as she was born. But we managed to do our first breastfeed within the first hour of birth, anyways. I think it was maybe, what's the maths between that? I think like 46 minutes or something like that between baby A and baby B.
Far out. What a beautiful birth of your twin girls.
Yeah.
You must have felt really proud.
Yeah, it was that focus that I had, I feel was really important to be able to make sure I had the birth that I wanted to align with my values and my vision of birth.
Hmm.
And honestly, it was something I worked really hard for, being able to stay healthy throughout my pregnancy and stay healthy throughout, the laboring, birthing side within a hospital system, which can be difficult. But thankfully, both of my experiences have been really good. And I think that's important because sometimes I guess it can be a bit overwhelming being in a hospital and knowing that the doctors and medical team is there. And obviously, of course, there is that space for them when it is a medical emergency. But if you're all well and healthy, you do you.
Go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. And it's a shame though that you did have to fight for it. It does sound like you did
Mm,
have to fight for the labor and birth that you wanted. And even while you were birthing, you still had a bit of a
yeah.
fight on your hands. So it's a real shame because like you said, you were healthy, the babies were healthy and fine, and they just needed you to give you some space to birth.
Mm, yeah. Which the senior doctor, ended up coming towards the end of the birth, and he was just like, "Oh, you didn't even need me here." I'm like, "I know. Have you
Yeah.
not have you not seen my medical record of coming in every 2 weeks and the babies being healthy?" And they were growing quite similar in size. So with twin pregnancies, they talk about I think it's a discordance between twin
Hmm.
A and twin B. And I think it's up to 20% that's considered safe. And the maximum that I ever had was about 5% discordance. So it
Hmm.
was really something that just reaffirmed that I'm healthy, my babies are healthy, I'll be able to birth my babies when they decide it's time to come, not, on that hospital timeline.
Yeah. And even in saying that, I have interviewed someone in the past, and this is absolutely not medical advice, it's just information and storytelling, I suppose. But I have interviewed someone in the past who measured under that 20% discordance. But then when they were
Mm.
born, it was a lot more than that difference. And still, they were both happy and healthy. And a beautiful birth and they were thriving babies. So even then, I believe it's more of a guideline in terms of measuring the health of twins. It's not a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I did listen to that podcast of yours, and I think her baby was like somewhere like, was it 4 kilos? Am I remembering that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And like my girls were not tiny, but yeah, they were a lot smaller compared to that. And I
Yeah.
guess obviously I made it to 36 and 6 weeks, so it
Yeah.
does make that difference. But yeah, my first twin A was 2.9 kilos, and my second was 2.7.
It's still a good size for 36
Yeah,
weeks.
I
Yeah.
think so too for twins and, being squished up in there.
Yeah.
So they did the best they could and they're like, oh, this is enough. I'm ready to come out now.
Yeah. Yeah. And just going back a little bit, did you have any tears or anything like that after the birth?
Yeah, no, I actually didn't. And I think that comes down to,
I threw my hands
yeah,
up in the air for
yeah.
people that obviously can't see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was about, I guess, taking the time and really breathing through the contractions and letting your body and baby do what they need to do and, slowly coming out, sometimes going back in and then slowly coming back out. Yeah, so no tears there. And I guess, now that you bring up breech birth compared to cephalic birth,
Yeah.
it didn't really feel any different. The only difference I felt was with my first twin coming out, the waters popped a lot stronger, I guess could be the word. It was a real like bang, pop, and she was out. Whereas with the breech birth, it was softer. Yeah.
Ah, nice. And I love that you're sharing that because I think it just removes some of that fear that I think people can have that with a breech baby, there's, a high risk of tearing and those sorts of things. And it's just removes that fear a little bit.
Mm,
Yeah, because
yeah.
it's, not necessarily the case. So
Yeah,
then,
well,
oh,
oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, you
No,
go.
I was I was just going to say, I don't know if it was my midwife or if it was a podcast that I was listening to where they said that the measurement of the head circumference and the hip circumference is the same. But
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I heard that somewhere. I can't remember exactly when. And then, I guess looking at the girls, it doesn't feel like that's accurate, but I guess the angle of which the head comes out and compared to the angle at which breech baby comes out, it's different. And even with looking at the girls now, the head shape of a breech baby and a cephalic baby is different. So my second twin, the breech baby, has quite a round little head, and then and then my twin A, obviously she had spent quite some time in my pelvis, so her head had kind of molded into that cone shape when she was born. So yeah, there's so many little differences.
Yeah. And can you talk us through the birth of your placenta? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so again, I had active management, so they had given me the injection because of the risk of postpartum hemorrhage. It was something that I just decided, let's go with it, let's get the placenta born and move on. I
Yeah.
was quite tired, even though it wasn't too long, thinking about it, I had gone into labor at like 9:45, and then both girls were born before 1 a.m. So it was, yeah, that second birth of the twin was hard work. And I just wanted to lay in bed and get breastfeeding and get to know my girls.
Yeah. And did you do anything special with your placenta this time around?
Yes, this time I did. I was picking between encapsulating and burying, and I did decide to take my placenta home and bury it in our backyard. So that was really nice to just have and commemorate that in our home and on our land.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love hearing
Mm.
these stories. I wish, like, just reflecting back, I wish I did more with mine. And I love
Mm.
hearing about, burials or encapsulation or some sort of spiritual ceremony for the placenta. I think is just so special.
Yeah, it really is. It's something I feel it's definitely forgotten about and not thought of much, when really that was, what was providing nutrients to your baby. And it was, yeah, a part of your baby's home for so long and sustaining them while they were in in your little body.
Yeah, and it's just a beautiful way, I think, of honoring your pregnancy and your birth as
Mm,
well, and closing off that chapter and then going to the new chapter, I guess, of your new little family and
mm.
who you are as a mother after that. Yeah, I think it's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I didn't get to do anything the first time around, I did really want it to be meaningful that second time around.
Yeah. So, did you do anything to prepare for postpartum this time around?
Yeah, this time I prepared a little bit more, especially because I had another one running around at home already.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everyone was really excited for the girls to be born and really happy and willing to help out as much as they could. So we had a lot of family coming over and cleaning the house and cooking meals and bringing nice meals over and doing all those things that I don't really want to be doing while I'm, resting and taking care and getting to know the girls.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. And like you said, you've got two of them now. So the recovery, it is more difficult because you've got two babies to feed and you've got two babies to get to sleep. And then you're recovering from two births. Like, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I really, that postpartum that I had with my son, it was, such a blur, and I had so much anxiety that I really wanted to remember and enjoy this postpartum. And I do feel a little bit jibbed because I had two little babies and it was that little bit harder, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it was easier because I kind of knew what to expect. But yeah, especially the breastfeeding side of things, it took a lot of work to make sure that I was able to breastfeed in the early days. They were born so little, borderline premature, because there was they were twins and they were born at 36, 37 weeks. They were sleepy and I had to constantly wake them up, and it was just something that I wasn't used to with my son. My son would just feed quite easily and regularly, and these girls were so different. I'm like, oh, this is a nice change. Like, I don't have to work as hard. But then my supply didn't build as much as it should have or it could have, which makes me a little bit sad. That's something that I wish I would have prepared for a little bit more. There's actually a great breastfeeding course for twins that I found from Shelley. I think it's Twin Mum Guide on Instagram,
Okay. Yeah.
and she has like a twin breastfeeding course, which was something that I was planning to do. But again, the girls came sooner than I expected, and I wasn't prepared as much as I could have been. Really would have loved to be able to do that, to make sure that I didn't struggle so much in the first week, 2 weeks, because that's when a lot of my doubt kind of crept in. I'm like, am I going to be able to breastfeed? I was expressing and it was just really full on.
Yeah. And did you get any lactation support postpartum?
I had like an online consultation with Milky Business. So
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
so she provides Medicare covered consultations online, which was great. And it was good to just chat about it with someone, but it wasn't that face to face that you can really benefit from. And I did have my maternal child health nurse come and to the home and do a check and all of that, but it wasn't anything that I externally searched for at LC.
Yeah. Okay. And how is your postpartum experience so far? Because you are still quite
Yeah.
freshly postpartum. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been good. I really enjoyed baby wearing with my son, and he was definitely a little koala that was always on me and happy to be on me. So that was great. And I was concerned. I'm like, oh no, am I going to be able to baby wear this time? There's two, but I did. So it was great, and I still am. They're definitely always on me and cuddled up and warm and feeding whenever they want. It was, again, something that I was able to do with my son. So, yeah, baby wearing was a big one.
Yes. How do you baby wear two babies?
So they have what's called a stretchy wrap. So it's just like
Oh, yeah,
the
okay.
normal wrap.
Yeah.
And yeah, you kind of just pop them both in and you wear them in front. It's great, but they did grow out of that, and I've moved on to what's called the mini monkey twin carrier.
Okay.
So that's like a structured one that I can just pop over my head and then pop them both in.
Yeah.
And I also have woven wraps that I'm still trying to figure out. And I think once the one of the twins or both of the twins have better head control, I can pop one on my back and then the other one on the front. So it makes that a bit easier and being able to do things.
Yeah, for sure. And how's your son Matisse transitioning to his life with two little sisters?
Yeah, oh, he loves it. He's always like, girls, look at me, watch my tricks, look what I can do.
Oh,
And asking me if he can hold them and cuddle them. And so that's been really good. And he's flipped between his favorites. It sounds terrible. And my mum always tells me, make sure that he doesn't have a favorite or else the other one's going to feel left out. And I mean, he's 3.5.
yeah,
And the girls,
he's a
yeah,
child. Yeah.
yeah, the girls are 3 months old. They're not going to remember.
No.
So, yeah, no, he does love that. It's been really nice to see that. And he's always helping out as much as he can. So it's been really good to have a little helper along and see him
Oh,
grow into a big brother role. Yeah.
yeah. Well, looking back, what are some of the most cherished aspects of your birth experiences?
I think the most fresh in my mind is obviously the twin birth. And it's just really being able to advocate for myself and feeling that I do have that power to be able to birth the girls on my own and be able to go into spontaneous labor. That was just a real highlight. And I was so proud, like, yay, I did it. I was able to birth the twins on my own.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for other mothers considering a vaginal twin birth based on your journey?
Educate yourself, look out for resources, and especially in this world of social media, there's so much that you can find online now, and there's so many
So good.
twin, yeah, there's so many twin mums that are providing that real life experience of what to expect with twins. The other one that I was looking at, Allegra from Aloha Nutrition on Instagram. She was pregnant at the same time that I was pregnant, so it was really nice to just follow along and see what she was doing. And she has great resources of, yeah, minimizing medical intervention and I guess more natural ways that you're able to supplement throughout pregnancy.
Yeah, nice. That's a great one. I haven't heard of her before.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I think she's got like 4 kids if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, like I said, following along while I was pregnant, it was like, oh cool, I know what to expect, or like this is what's gonna come. Yeah.
Yeah. And did your journey with pregnancy and birth bring about any aspects of self discovery for you?
Yeah, I definitely think it was, I can do it and I am powerful and I'm strong. It's something that really is needed in motherhood because it can be so difficult, especially the sleep aspect of things. It's
Mm,
a hot topic in motherhood, how your babies are sleeping, and that's probably the number one question that I got, especially with my son. And so I think just feeling the second time around, once I had that experience with my son, I just knew that I had to do what was going to work for me, and it's going
mhm.
to be different for everyone. And you just need to do what works for you so that you can get through and survive.
Yeah, that's right. Sleep is such a contentious topic. Everyone gets
Mm,
so worked up about it. And I've had moments where I've thought I need to switch off social media because just being in this space and especially with this podcast and the Instagram page that I have, every day there are posts about different methods of sleep. And people can get quite even aggressive about their views on sleep. And it's really, I mean, it's great that we have so many resources out there now, but it's really hard to focus inward and do what's best for you, I think,
Yeah.
in this world of social media around sleep.
Yeah. And I think you're so right in saying that. I think you need to think about what your values are and what you want your journey in motherhood to look like, because it's so different for everyone. What works for someone might not work for someone else, and really it's not anyone's business what you do. Like,
Yeah.
you need to do what works for you, obviously making sure that it's a safe and appropriate thing to do. Then you just have to do what works for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Well, I've loved hearing your story, and to wrap things up, can you offer one piece of general advice to do with pregnancy, birth, or postpartum to the listeners?
Really, like I have been banging on about, is resources, educate yourself, and do what feels right for you, because at the end of the day, it's your body, you're birthing your babies, it's your choice. It's really your choice what you want to do, no matter how it might come across from someone else, or from the medical teams, family members, or friends. It is your choice. Don't be scared to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Tam. I've absolutely loved hearing your birth stories, and yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to the next podcasts that you keep doing.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Mama Village podcast. Check out the show notes for a link to the Mama Village Instagram page where I upload pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and motherhood resources. Please let me know what you think of today's show and what you would like to hear from the podcast by leaving a rating and review. If you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform. If you would like to share your positive pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and motherhood story, or if you have education in the space to share, please send me a direct message on Instagram or email the.mamavillage@outlook.com. For all my listeners out there, thank you for your continuing support, and I will speak to you all in next week's episode.